Hi, sorry for the glare in front of a window. But for my first individual assignment, I'm going to be discussing voting trends and kind of how it plays a factor into the elections and I guess really the upcoming election in 2020. So when discussing the issue of voting in the upcoming election, everyone has their opinions about who's running, who they think will win, why they should win, or why they would want them to win, and how it would kind of hurt or help America. And of course, if they support our current president and want him to get reelected. So it's just kind of a lot about who's going to win, but not a lot of talk about who's going to vote. So that's what I'm more interested in, even more than the candidates. So the voting trends and how they rise or fall according to the different demographics. Some of the factors that affect these trends are income, education, race, geographic standing, and just some others that I'll mention. So getting started, for example, voters' level of education has historically been highly predictive of which party they support. So, for example, in one of my sources that's going to be on my Works Cited page, there's a bar graph that shows the Democratic affiliation compared to the level of education of the voters. So it shows that as the level of education increases in the voters, there's more Democratic supporters, if that makes sense. So the highest Democratic supporters are shown to have some sort of postgraduate college degree, like their master's or a doctorate degree. And this isn't to say that those who support the Republican Party or any other party, for that matter, are uneducated. It's just to show that there is a correlation in different voting factors, I guess. So, and then going off of education, I would argue that then salary and wealth plays a factor as well, because it's kind of a trend that as like more education you have, the higher salary you'll make. If that makes sense. So going along with education, salary is a big factor too. So another factor that plays into voting trends and the party affiliation is gender, of course. So as shown in the same source, as mentioned before, women are much more likely to be Democratic supporters rather than males to be Democratic supporters. So of course, some of the reasons for that being the ideals that the Democratic Party supports, like for me, reproductive health care would be a really big factor in that. So, for example, the graph shows that over 50% of the female population are Democrats, while only about 43% of the male population are Democrats, which, just saying those numbers, it doesn't sound like a vast difference, but those are the gender categories alone. So 50% of females support the Democratic Party, while only 35% only 35% support the Republican Party. So that's kind of like that maybe. And then 43% of males are Democrats, while 40% are Republicans. So that's obviously a smaller gap. And that kind of shows how gender plays a role in who votes for who, if that makes sense. Lastly, race is a huge factor in determining voting trends. This factor is very polarized, as one can assume, with our current president. Most white people support the Republican Party, while many, I would say if not the majority, of other races support the Democratic Party or Independent Party. So to kind of put it into perspective, about 45% of white people are Republican, while only 40% are Democrats. And if these numbers don't make sense, it's because I'm not including the Independent Party, which those are on the graphs, but I just kind of wanted to keep it Democratic and Republican for the sake of the video. And then, so 45% and 40% among white people. That's not a large difference, obviously. And then almost 85% of black people are Democrats, while only 5% are Republican. So obviously that's huge. And then lastly, among the Hispanic population, almost 60% are Democrats, with about 25 or so being Republican. So all these factors combined can be the reason for a decline in the voter turnout. And I found that although there's only been about a 5% decrease globally in voter turnout, these are all strong contributors as to why that is. Because as I said earlier, a lot of people talk about the candidates and who they're going to vote for, but at least in my opinion, it's not often talked about who goes out and votes, unless it has to do with age, which obviously that is a contributor as well. But I just thought these statistics and factors should be shown too. So thank you. I'm sorry I went over a little bit.